It began with a whisper, not from a royal advisor, not from a historian, but from the very people who see everything yet say nothing, the palace servants. One quiet statement, repeated among them for years, has now surfaced with shocking clarity. Princess Diana once issued a chilling warning about Harry's future wife. A warning so specific, so firm, that it allegedly left even King Charles shaken when the truth resurfaced. But what exactly was Diana protecting, and why? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For decades, the palace staff have existed in the shadows of royal life. They are the silent observers of moments history rarely records. They open doors before the cameras arrive and close them long after the world has stopped watching. They hear the private conversations, the quiet frustrations, the whispered fears that never appear in official statements. And while they rarely speak, their memories are often more precise than any diary or royal archive. Among these quiet witnesses, one recollection has recently begun circulating again with startling clarity. It is not a rumor born from gossip or speculation. According to several insiders, it is something Princess Diana said herself during a private conversation years before the world would ever hear the name of the woman who would later marry Prince Harry. The phrase was short, but it carried the weight of a command. Those who recall hearing it say Diana spoke with unusual firmness, her voice calm yet unmistakably serious. "Never let Harry's wife touch this." The words were so striking that they lingered in the memories of the staff who heard them. At the time, the meaning was unclear. Harry was young. His future wife was an unknown figure somewhere beyond the horizon of royal life. Yet Diana, according to those who were present, sounded absolutely certain that the warning mattered. For years, the sentence remained buried in quiet recollection, something remembered but rarely discussed aloud. But recently, as royal tensions have shifted and old memories have resurfaced within palace corridors, that sentence has begun to echo again with unsettling force. What made the words so haunting was not simply their bluntness, but the mystery surrounding them. Diana did not explain what she was referring to. She did not describe the object or secret she was protecting. But according to insiders, the tone of her voice suggested that whatever she meant was far more significant than jewelry or ceremonial possessions. Some palace staff quietly believe it involves something deeply personal, something tied to Diana's legacy, her private history, or perhaps even a truth about the royal family that was never meant to become public. Others suggest it may have been connected to items she guarded closely in her final years, possessions she reportedly handled with unusual care and rarely discussed openly. For years, the warning remained little more than a strange memory shared quietly among staff who had long ago learned the value of silence. But the atmosphere inside the palace has changed in recent years. As new members entered the royal family and long-standing tensions surfaced behind closed doors, old recollections began resurfacing. Conversations that had once been forgotten were suddenly revisited with fresh curiosity. And that was when the phrase Diana's warning about Harry's future wife began appearing again in hushed discussions among those who had once served her directly. What stunned insiders most, however, was the moment the recollection reportedly reached the ears of King Charles. According to individuals familiar with the conversation, the reaction was immediate and deeply unsettling. Charles, who had spent decades navigating the complicated legacy of his marriage to Diana, suddenly found himself confronted with a sentence she had spoken years before her death, one that appeared to carry implications about the future of his own family. Those present say the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. What had once sounded like a curious memory now felt like something far heavier. A warning. a prophecy, a sentence that refused to fade quietly into the past. And the deeper palace insiders began reflecting on those words, the more unsettling the questions became. Why had Diana spoken so definitively about a woman who did not yet exist in Harry's life? What was the mysterious that she was determined to protect? And perhaps most troubling of all, how had she seemed so certain that one day protecting it would matter? Because inside the palace, memories have a strange way of resurfacing exactly when the royal family least expects them. And the more those old recollections are examined, the clearer it becomes that Diana may have been preparing for something long before anyone realized she was planning ahead. And to understand why those words carried such explosive weight inside the palace, we must return to the final years of Diana's life, when she quietly began making decisions that few people around her fully understood. Long before the world knew the name Meghan Markle, Princess Diana was already thinking about the women who would one day enter her sons' lives. But according to palace insiders, Diana didn't leave everything to chance. In private moments far from the cameras, she reportedly put safeguards in place, instructions whispered to trusted staff, and protections designed to ensure certain parts of her legacy would remain untouched. Those who served within the palace during Diana's final years often describe her not simply as a princess navigating public pressure, but as a mother quietly planning for a future she knew she might not always control. Behind the warmth the world adored was a woman who understood the delicate machinery of royal life better than most people realized. She knew that the palace was not just a family home, it was a system of power, tradition, and influence that could shape the destinies of those inside it. And for Diana, the people she trusted most during that time were often not royal officials or advisors, but the staff members who moved quietly through the corridors of the palace each day. Many of those staff members would later recall how Diana spoke to them with an unusual honesty. She confided in them, sometimes casually, sometimes with striking seriousness. Conversations about her sons were common. Harry and William were the center of her world, and Diana often wondered aloud about the lives they would build as adults. She spoke about the kind of partners they might choose, the pressures they would face, and the complicated expectations that came with belonging to one of the most scrutinized families in the world. But occasionally, according to those who remember these conversations, her reflections turned more strategic. In those moments, Diana reportedly spoke about safeguarding certain items that she believed carried emotional and historical significance. Some insiders claim she referred to personal heirlooms she had kept close during her years inside the royal family. Others believe she may have meant private documents, letters, notes, perhaps even personal reflections that revealed truths about her life behind palace walls. Whatever the items were, the tone of her instructions was unmistakable. She wanted them protected. Not displayed, not circulated, protected. And what unsettled the staff who heard these words was the clarity with which she spoke about the future. Diana did not frame these instructions as vague hopes or passing thoughts. She reportedly gave precise guidance about how these items should be handled and who should be allowed near them. It was not about wealth or value in the traditional sense. Those who recall her words insist the concern ran deeper. Diana seemed determined to ensure that certain parts of her story, certain symbols of trust and memory, remained untouched by anyone who might enter the family later without fully understanding what they represented. For many years, these conversations were simply remembered as part of Diana's protective nature as a mother. But the seriousness in her voice never faded from the minds of those who heard her speak. She was calm when she said these things, yet unwavering. It was the tone of someone who believed the future could be unpredictable, and who was quietly putting boundaries in place long before anyone else thought they were necessary. Looking back now, palace insiders say those conversations feel different. What once sounded like the careful thinking of a devoted mother now carries a deeper weight. Because if Diana truly took the time to warn those around her about protecting something so personal, then it raises a question that still echoes through palace corridors today. But if Diana truly left behind such a warning, the next question becomes unavoidable. What exactly was the mysterious object she was determined to keep out of Harry's wife's hands? The palace has countless treasures, crowns, jewels, diaries, and letters that could rewrite royal history. But insiders claim Diana's warning wasn't about the crown jewels or public artifacts. Instead, it centered on something intensely personal, something that carried emotional weight far beyond gold or diamonds. And according to the servants who overheard her words, Diana guarded this item with a determination that stunned even those closest to her. Inside royal residences, objects often carry stories far deeper than their material value. A necklace may symbolize a marriage alliance. A handwritten note might capture a private moment between generations of monarchs. Yet those who remember Diana's warning insist the item she spoke about did not belong to the usual category of royal treasures. It was not part of the official collection cataloged in palace archives. It was something private, something that lived closer to her personal world than the ceremonial life the public knew. And that is precisely why the mystery surrounding it has grown so intense. Among palace insiders, theories have quietly circulated for years. Some believe the object Diana wanted protected may have been a collection of private letters. Diana was known to write frequently, often pouring her thoughts into correspondence with close friends and confidants. Letters that revealed her vulnerabilities, her frustrations with royal expectations, and the fierce love she held for her sons. If such letters existed in a hidden collection, they would represent more than personal memories. They could potentially reshape how history remembers her life inside the royal family. Others suggest the item might involve heirlooms that never appeared in public records. Diana inherited certain personal belongings that carried deep sentimental meaning. Objects tied not just to royal lineage, but to emotional bonds within the family. Some insiders whisper about jewelry pieces she rarely wore publicly, but kept close as private symbols of loyalty and trust. These items, they say, were never meant to circulate among future members of the royal household. In Diana's mind, they represented something sacred, connections she wanted preserved exactly as they were. Then there are the more unsettling theories. A handful of longtime staff members believe Diana may have been referring to documents connected to royal relationships themselves. Personal notes, perhaps even reflections about the complex dynamics within the family. Diana lived through some of the most emotionally turbulent years the monarchy had faced in modern history. She saw firsthand how alliances formed, how loyalties shifted, and how deeply private conflicts could shape public outcomes. If she recorded those experiences in writing, the pages would contain a perspective few historians have ever been able to access. But beyond the speculation, what stands out most strongly in the memories of those who heard her speak is the emotional weight attached to her warning. Diana did not treat the object as something valuable simply because of its rarity or wealth. She treated it as something that carried trust, something that represented a part of her life she refused to let be misunderstood, misused, or turned into a spectacle. Her voice, according to those who recall it, carried a quiet intensity that left no room for doubt. And that is why the sentence she spoke has never faded from the minds of the palace staff who heard it. They remember the exact phrasing. They remember the seriousness behind it. Most importantly, they remember that Diana did not say it casually. She said it like someone setting a boundary that should never be crossed. For years, Those words existed only as a memory shared quietly among people who understood the unspoken rules of palace loyalty. But time has a way of bringing old memories back into the light. And when Diana's warning eventually resurfaced in conversation decades later, it did not remain a quiet recollection for long. Yet the true shock inside the palace didn't come from the object itself, but from the moment decades later when King Charles reportedly heard Diana's words repeated. When the story resurfaced inside palace circles, insiders say the reaction was immediate and deeply unsettling. The phrase attributed to Diana carried more than nostalgia. It carried accusation, protection, and unfinished tension. According to those present, when King Charles was told exactly what Diana had once said about Harry's future wife, the room reportedly fell silent. The conversation itself was not meant to be dramatic. At least, not at first. It reportedly unfolded during a routine internal discussion among senior palace staff. The kind of quiet exchange where memories from past decades occasionally surface as the monarchy navigates its constantly shifting future. Yet, as the discussion drifted toward Diana's private instructions and the recollections of those who had served her closely, one of the longtime aides repeated the words that had lived in palace whispers for years. The sentence was delivered calmly, but the effect was anything but calm. Never let Harry's wife touch this. According to insiders familiar with the moment, the atmosphere changed instantly. Inside the palace, Diana's name still carries extraordinary emotional weight. Decades may have passed since her death, yet her presence lingers in a way few figures in royal history ever have. For many staff members who served during her time, she remains more than a memory. She represents a chapter of the monarchy that was turbulent, emotional, and deeply human. Her story never truly closed, it simply evolved into legend. So when her words are recalled, especially words that sound like a warning, they are never treated lightly. For King Charles, hearing that sentence reportedly struck a far more personal chord. His relationship with Diana was one of the most scrutinized and emotionally complicated unions the royal family had ever experienced. Their marriage began under the glow of global admiration, but unraveled under relentless pressure, personal conflict, and public scrutiny. Even after their separation and eventual divorce, Diana remained a defining presence in Charles's life and in the public narrative surrounding the monarchy. Her voice, even remembered through others, still had the power to stir unfinished emotions. Those who were present during the conversation say Charles appeared visibly unsettled by the precision of the warning. Diana had not spoken vaguely or symbolically. She had given a direct instruction about Harry's future wife years before such a person even existed in the public imagination. The specificity of it was difficult to ignore. It raised questions that had never been asked before. How could Diana have felt so certain about something that had not yet happened? And what exactly had she been protecting with such determination? Palace aides reportedly reacted with the same quiet tension. No one rushed to dismiss the statement. No one laughed it off as an old memory exaggerated by time. Instead, the room remained suspended in a kind of reflective silence. Because within royal households, memories carry power. Words spoken years ago can suddenly become relevant in ways no one expected. And Diana's warning now sounded less like an odd remark and more like something intentionally placed into the future, something waiting to be remembered. What made the moment even more unsettling was the realization that the sentence had survived unchanged in the memories of several staff members. Different people had recalled it over the years, always with the same phrasing, always with the same tone of seriousness attached to it. It was not a rumor reshaped by gossip. It was a recollection preserved with unusual clarity, and that consistency made it impossible to dismiss as coincidence. For Charles, the implications were deeply personal. The warning did not just reference an object or possession. It hinted at Diana's protective instincts as a mother, and perhaps even her fears about how the future might unfold for Harry. In that moment, her voice seemed to echo across decades, cutting through the careful composure that usually defines palace life. And as the conversation slowly moved forward, one unsettling thought began to take shape among those present. If Diana had spoken those words with such conviction long before the circumstances ever existed, then perhaps she had sensed something others had not. But as the palace processed the shock of Diana's words, another question began to circulate quietly among insiders. Why had she been so certain about the danger she was warning against? Those who knew Diana best often described her as deeply intuitive. She sensed tensions others overlooked and predicted emotional storms long before they arrived. So when palace servants began recalling her warning about Harry's future wife, many insiders wondered whether Diana had simply been protecting her legacy or whether she had foreseen something the rest of the palace had not yet realized. Throughout her years within the royal family, Diana developed a reputation that extended far beyond the public image of compassion and elegance the world admired. Behind the palace walls, people who worked closely with her often spoke about her remarkable emotional awareness. She had an uncanny ability to read the atmosphere of a room before anyone else noticed it shifting. She sensed fractures forming in relationships long before those fractures became visible to the public. For Diana, emotions were not background noise, they were signals. Signals she rarely ignored. This instinct became particularly evident during the most turbulent chapters of her life. While the public watched the fairy tale unravel through headlines and interviews, Diana had already been navigating the emotional realities of royal life for years. Friends later recalled how she would quietly predict conflicts that others dismissed as temporary tensions. She often spoke about how the monarchy's internal pressures could shape people in unexpected ways, and how the weight of tradition could strain even the strongest personal bonds. These were not dramatic declarations. They were observations made in quiet moments, delivered with a kind of calm certainty that made people pause. That same instinct may explain the warning she gave about Harry's future wife. Because when insiders revisit those words today, they no longer hear them simply as protective instructions about an object or heirloom. Instead, many interpret the statement as something far more layered. Diana may have been speaking about safeguarding the emotional legacy she hoped to leave for her sons. The love she fought to preserve in their lives. The trust she worked so hard to build despite the chaos surrounding their childhood. To understand that possibility, it helps to remember how fiercely Diana guarded the emotional world of William and Harry. She wanted them to experience life beyond the rigid expectations of royal duty. She wanted them to feel normalcy, laughter, freedom, but she also understood that the monarchy would eventually shape their adult lives in ways she could not fully control. New influences would enter their world. New relationships would form. And those relationships would inevitably interact with the complicated history Diana herself had lived through. Among palace insiders today, some believe her warning may have reflected concerns about how future family dynamics could unfold. Diana had seen how deeply personal relationships could ripple through the structure of the monarchy. She knew that marriages within the royal family were never simply about two individuals. They carried consequences that affected generations, reputations, and alliances within the institution itself. If she sensed even the possibility of those pressures one day touching Harry's life, it would explain why her words carried such urgency. What unsettles many observers now is the eerie sense of accuracy some people attach to Diana's instincts. Over the years, several of her quiet predictions about royal tensions proved surprisingly close to reality. Moments she once worried about privately eventually surfaced in public narratives that shook the monarchy. That pattern has led some insiders to wonder whether the warning about Harry's future wife was not merely protective, it may have been intuitive. And perhaps that is why the sentence has remained so haunting. Because Diana did not explain exactly what she meant. Her words were brief, direct, and open to interpretation. They could refer to an object, a secret, or something far more symbolic. A boundary she wanted preserved, a legacy she wanted protected. The deeper palace insiders reflect on her instincts, the more complex the mystery becomes. Diana may have been speaking about something physical. Or she may have been hinting at something emotional, something invisible but equally powerful. And the possibility that her warning carried multiple meanings only adds to the sense that her voice was reaching far beyond the moment when she first spoke those words. And if Diana truly sensed the future turbulence surrounding Harry's marriage, then the next chapter of this story reveals just how dramatically the royal family would eventually change. When Prince Harry announced his engagement, the world celebrated a modern royal love story. But behind the palace walls, insiders claim the atmosphere was far more complicated. Old memories resurfaced. Private warnings were quietly revisited. And among certain longtime staff members, Diana's mysterious instruction suddenly felt less like an odd comment and more like a prophecy. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Headlines praised the union as a symbol of a changing monarchy, one stepping boldly into a new era. Crowds gathered outside palace gates, cheering the couple as they appeared smiling and hopeful. For millions watching across the world, the engagement represented renewal, a fresh chapter for a royal family that had endured decades of scrutiny and emotional upheaval. It looked like the beginning of a modern fairy tale. Yet inside the palace corridors, the mood was far more complex than the celebration unfolding beyond its walls. Among senior staff and longtime aides, the announcement stirred something deeper than excitement. It stirred memory. Those who had served the royal household during Diana's years suddenly found themselves recalling conversations they had not thought about in a long time. Her words, once dismissed as the protective instincts of a devoted mother, began to echo with new intensity. The phrase about Harry's future wife, spoken so calmly, yet remembered so clearly, quietly resurfaced in hushed discussions among those who had heard it decades earlier. For some, it felt like an eerie coincidence. For others, it felt like the past was suddenly reaching into the present. The tension did not come from hostility toward the engagement itself. Rather, it came from the sense that the monarchy was once again stepping into unfamiliar territory. The royal institution has always been built upon traditions that evolve slowly, carefully balancing continuity with change. But Harry's relationship represented a shift that some insiders felt would test those traditions more than anyone expected. New influences were entering the royal orbit, bringing perspectives and expectations that did not always align easily with the rigid rhythms of palace life. Within this atmosphere, even the smallest details began to carry unexpected significance. Conversations about heirlooms, family possessions, and personal items once owned by Diana quietly became more sensitive. Certain objects connected to her memory were suddenly discussed with unusual caution. Those who remembered her warning could not ignore the possibility that she had been referring to something specific, something still held within the family's private collections. While no one openly declared that Diana's words had predicted anything, the unease surrounding them was impossible to dismiss entirely. For William in particular, Diana's legacy had always been something deeply personal. The items she left behind were not simply artifacts of royal history. They were reminders of a mother whose presence still shaped his and Harry's lives long after her passing. And as Harry's engagement unfolded, those memories inevitably resurfaced within family conversations. Every step forward for the new couple carried the shadow of Diana's influence, her legacy quietly woven into the emotional landscape of the royal household. As the months passed, the divide within the palace began to grow more noticeable. Publicly, the monarchy presented unity, celebration, and optimism. But privately, insiders describe a more complicated environment, one where loyalty to tradition, personal emotions, and the unpredictable force of change all collided. Diana's warning, once buried in quiet recollection, had become a lingering question that no one seemed able to answer with certainty. Because the more people thought about her words, the harder they became to dismiss as coincidence. The sentence had been spoken long before the circumstances existed, yet somehow it now seemed strangely connected to the unfolding reality of Harry's new life. And as the royal household adjusted to the transformation brought by this marriage, one unsettling thought began to circulate more openly among those who remembered Diana best. Yet, as the royal tensions deepened, palace insiders began asking a question no one could easily answer: had Diana's warning been ignored? For decades, palace servants have guarded countless royal secrets. But according to insiders, this one may have been among the most carefully protected. Diana's warning wasn't written in official documents or royal decrees. It lived quietly in the memories of the staff who heard it firsthand. And for years, they kept silent. Inside the royal household, silence is not merely a professional expectation, it is a tradition as old as the monarchy itself. Staff members who work within palace walls understand that they are entrusted with more than duties. They are entrusted with moments the world will never see, conversations that never reach headlines, and emotions that never appear in official statements. Loyalty within this environment is not simply about service, it is about discretion. Over generations, palace staff have developed an unspoken code that protects the privacy of the royal family long after individual events have passed. Secrets are not written down, they are carried quietly, preserved in memory, and rarely spoken aloud. That is why Diana's warning remained hidden for so many years. Those who heard it understood instinctively that it was not meant to travel beyond the quiet circle of people present in that moment. It was spoken in confidence, in a tone that made its seriousness unmistakable. For the staff who heard it, the instruction became something to remember rather than something to repeat. Time moved forward. Royal life changed. New chapters unfolded within the palace. Yet the memory of those words lingered among the few people who had heard them directly. What makes this story unusual, however, is how consistently that memory survived. Staff members who served Diana closely often remained within the royal household for decades. Some moved into different roles. Others retired quietly after years of service. But among those who had shared those years with her, the recollection of that moment never faded completely. Occasionally it surfaced in private conversations between trusted colleagues, always spoken carefully, always with the same sense of respect for the woman who had once commanded such loyalty from those around her. Diana inspired that loyalty in a way few members of the royal family ever have. Staff who worked for her often describe her not as distant or formal, but as deeply human. She remembered names, noticed small acts of kindness, and treated those around her with warmth that left lasting impressions. For many palace employees, she was not simply a princess they served. She was someone they admired and protected long after her voice was gone. That emotional connection explains why her words remained vivid in their minds even decades later. But something changed in recent years. As tensions inside the royal family grew more visible and the monarchy entered another period of public scrutiny, old recollections began resurfacing in ways they had not before. Conversations among longtime staff slowly expanded beyond quiet remembrance. People who had once kept the story entirely private began acknowledging that Diana's warning might carry new relevance in the present moment. It was no longer just a memory from the past. It had become a question about the future. The fact that multiple individuals recalled the same sentence spoken in nearly identical phrasing made the story impossible to dismiss entirely. Memories can fade or shift over time, yet this one remained remarkably consistent. Those who remembered it described the same tone, the same seriousness, the same unmistakable instruction about protecting something from Harry's future wife. That consistency gave the recollection a strange durability, as though Diana's words had been etched into the minds of those who heard them. Even now, insiders say the staff who remember that moment speak about it with the same careful discretion they always maintained. They are not seeking attention or recognition. If anything, their loyalty to Diana remains the reason they speak cautiously at all. But the simple fact that the story has begun to circulate again within palace conversations suggests that the warning has taken on a new significance. Because memories inside royal households rarely resurface without reason. And when they do, they tend to carry questions that demand answers. But the story doesn't end with the servants' memories because the deeper question still lingers in the palace corridors. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't the object Diana wanted protected. Perhaps it's the meaning behind her warning. Because those who analyze her life closely believe the phrase, "Never let Harry's wife touch this," may have symbolized something far greater than a physical possession. As the years have passed and the royal family has evolved through triumphs, scandals, and profound emotional shifts, the sentence attributed to Diana has taken on a new depth. What once sounded like a straightforward instruction about safeguarding an item now invites far more complex interpretations. Those who study Diana's life closely often point out that she rarely spoke in purely material terms when it came to her children. For her, legacy was never about jewels or property. It was about memory, identity, and the emotional inheritance she hoped to leave behind for William and Harry. Within that context, some palace observers believe the warning may have been symbolic from the very beginning. Diana might not have been referring to a single object hidden within a drawer or locked inside a vault. Instead, she may have been speaking about something intangible, yet deeply powerful, the emotional space she created between her sons and the world that surrounded them. That bond, forged during years when the royal family faced relentless public scrutiny, was something she guarded fiercely. It was the foundation of the trust that carried them through childhood and into adulthood. If Diana feared anything about the future, insiders suggest it may have been the possibility that outside pressures could weaken that bond. The monarchy, with its rigid traditions and constant public attention, has always tested relationships within the royal family. Diana experienced those pressures firsthand. She understood how quickly alliances could shift and how easily personal connections could become entangled with institutional expectations. In that light, her warning may have been less about exclusion and more about protection, a quiet attempt to shield the emotional legacy she had built for her sons. There is also another possibility that palace historians occasionally discuss in private conversations. Diana spent the final years of her life attempting to reclaim her own story. After years defined by public narratives she could not control, she began expressing her experiences more openly. Interviews, letters, and conversations with close confidants revealed a woman determined to ensure that the truth of her life would not disappear behind palace silence. If she preserved certain writings or personal reflections, they would represent a deeply personal account of the monarchy during one of its most turbulent eras. Protecting those words would mean protecting her voice itself. That possibility gives her warning an entirely different dimension. It suggests she may have been safeguarding not just an object, but a perspective, a version of events she wanted preserved exactly as she lived them. For Diana, whose life unfolded under the relentless gaze of the public, controlling that narrative may have felt like the final act of independence she could offer her sons. Even today, the power of that possibility continues to resonate among those who reflect on her life. Diana's influence has never faded within the royal story. Her memory shapes how the public understands the monarchy, how her sons navigate their roles, and how the institution itself responds to change. A single sentence remembered by palace servants may seem small in comparison to the enormous legacy she left behind. Yet the persistence of those words reveals how deeply they struck those who heard them. What makes the mystery so compelling is that no definitive answer has ever emerged. The item she referred to, if it was an item at all, remains unidentified. The true meaning behind her warning remains open to interpretation. Each possibility leads to another layer of questions about Diana's instincts, her fears, and her hopes for the future of her sons. And that lingering uncertainty may be exactly why the story refuses to disappear. Because within the world of royal history, some of the most powerful truths are never fully explained. They survive as echoes, fragments of conversations that continue to shape how the past is understood. And yet, as palace insiders quietly revisit Diana's warning today, many believe the final chapter of this story may still be unfolding. More than 2 decades after her death, Princess Diana's voice still echoes through the palace corridors. A single warning remembered by servants, whispered among insiders, and reportedly powerful enough to shake King Charles, continues to raise questions about the future she feared and the legacy she fought to protect. Time has moved forward, monarchs have aged, generations have grown, and the royal family has stepped into new chapters of its long and complicated history. Yet Diana's presence has never truly faded from the story. In many ways, her influence has only grown stronger. The world remembers her not simply as a princess, but as a figure who changed how the monarchy was perceived. She reshaped the emotional language of royalty, bringing vulnerability, compassion, and honesty into an institution that had long relied on distance and restraint. That transformation did not disappear with her passing. It continues to shape how the royal family is viewed, how her sons navigate their roles, and how the public interprets every new development within the palace walls. Within that enduring legacy, the warning she reportedly gave carries a strange and powerful resonance. It is not the length of the sentence that captures attention. It is the mystery surrounding it. A few simple words, remembered by palace staff, have grown into something larger than the moment in which they were spoken. They invite speculation. They provoke curiosity. Most of all, they force people to reconsider how deeply Diana understood the world she lived in. For many observers, the idea that she may have anticipated future tensions adds an almost haunting dimension to her memory. What makes the story so compelling is the emotional weight attached to it. Diana's life was defined by contrasts, extraordinary fame paired with profound personal struggle, global admiration intertwined with private heartbreak. She fought fiercely to protect the emotional world of her sons, often pushing against the rigid expectations of the royal institution to ensure they experienced warmth and freedom beyond palace walls. When people hear about a warning she may have left behind, they do not simply interpret it as a curious anecdote. They see it as another reflection of that fierce maternal instinct that defined so much of her life. Yet the deeper one examines the story, the more elusive its answer becomes. The mysterious this Diana referred to remains unidentified. Whether it was an object, a collection of personal writings, or something far more symbolic may never be fully revealed. And perhaps that uncertainty is part of why the story continues to captivate those who follow the royal family closely. Mysteries have a way of keeping legacies alive, allowing each generation to revisit the past and search for meaning in words that once seemed ordinary. Inside the royal household, memories have a long lifespan. Conversations spoken quietly decades earlier can resurface unexpectedly, reshaping how history is interpreted. Diana's voice, even now, seems to move through those memories like a quiet echo, reminding those who knew her that she understood the emotional stakes of royal life in ways few others did. Her instincts, her warnings, and her fierce loyalty to her sons remain woven into the fabric of the monarchy's ongoing story. And perhaps that is why the sentence continues to linger in palace whispers and public curiosity alike. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in history are not grand proclamations or official declarations. Sometimes they are simple words spoken privately, remembered carefully, and rediscovered long after their meaning becomes impossible to ignore. Because in the royal family, the past is never truly buried, and sometimes the most powerful warnings are the ones whispered long before anyone realizes why they mattered. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.